Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first let's talk about the conflict on the territory of Ukraine, where during the previous 12 hours the Russians have improved their positions significantly. And first let's talk about the northern directions, and first let's talk about the most northern parts of the Sumy region. According to different sources, the Russians continue their offensive operation along the border, and these are the changes on the ground between the dates. This is the end of the 11th of August, and this is already the beginning of the 12th of August of 2026. According to these changes, the Russians are about to finish the battle for the settlement of Ulanovo. The battle for this village started almost a month ago, or maybe even more, and now we see that the Russians are about to finish the battle for this territory, and that there is just one street remains under complete control of the armed forces of Ukraine. Furthermore, the Russians began a fast-sliding attack in the direction of the village by the name of Vushenky. We haven't seen anything from this area for a very long period of time, but now we see with the end of the battle for the settlement of Ulanovo, the Russians decided to intensify their offensive operation through this territory as well. As for the territory around the settlement of Bachevsk, now we also see that the Russians are tasked to finish the battle for this pocket around the settlement of Korinok with the purpose to maintain the lines and to shorten the distances. So this village most likely would be captured by Russians within the next months or something like this. And the most important thing is that the Russians began advancing along the border in the northern direction, and it seems that in coming days the battle for the settlements of Fatovizh and Muravyinina are going to start. Now let's move further and let's talk about the Kharkiv direction, because the most important updates we received right exactly from this area. First, let's talk about the northern Kharkiv area. The Russians during the previous several days improved their positions significantly around the villages of Kazacha, Lopany and Hoptivka, and these are the changes on the ground. This is the end of the 10th of August, this is the end of the 11th of August. The Russians, according to different sources, took under complete control the settlement of Shcherbynivka, and we are talking about this village. There are buildings in this area, and this morning we received the report that the Russians continue advancing and that currently the Russians entered the settlement of Bugaevka, Goptovka, Kyiv and Tokarevka. Furthermore, the Russians, according to different sources, began advancing further in the southern direction towards the settlement of Nova Kazacha. The battle for the settlement of Kazacha, Lopany hasn't been ended, as you can see, but at the same time the Russians decided not to waste time and they began advancing further in the southern direction, because it seems that the Russians are tasked to get as close as possible to the city of Kharkiv from the north in a very short period of time. Now let's talk about the most important direction, about the northeastern parts of the Kharkiv region. During the previous night, as you can see, the map has been adjusted, and these are the changes on the ground between the dates. So this is the end of the 10th of August, and here we can see the changes between the 29th of July and 10th of August. As you can see, the Russians improved their positions, and by the end of the 11th of August of 2026, we received the report that first sabotage and reconnaissance groups of the armed forces of the Russian Federation entered the village of Chorne and began advancing with the purpose to take under complete control this belt of villages in the most northeastern parts of the Kharkiv region, just with one purpose: to cut Ukraine's contingent in the area of the most northeastern parts of the Kharkiv region from supply and support. So this is the most important task for Russians. And this morning, on the 12th of August of 2026, we received additional reports about the situation in this area, and according to these reports, the Russians captured the settlement of Vadiana. And once again, these are the changes on the ground between the dates. This is the end of the 11th of August, and this is already the beginning of the 12th of August. The Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, as well as the Group of Forces North, reported that the village of Vadiana was captured by Russians, and furthermore, different sources reported that the Russians continued advancing further in the southwestern direction, and currently there are very heavy clashes for the village of Velykyi, which is is the next village after the village of Vadiane, and the most important thing is that the Russians began advancing from the area of the village of Velykyi Burluk in the southern direction. Furthermore, the group of forces north published a very interesting article about the situation on the ground. The group of forces north reported that right now there are very heavy clashes on the outskirts of the settlement of Petropavlivka, so this is already the next village to the south of the settlement of Velykyi Burluk, and the Russians stated that currently there are very heavy clashes already on the territory of the village of Vasilyevka. So as we discussed during the previous videos, the front line through the northeastern parts of the Kharkiv region has collapsed completely. The Russians accelerate their offensive operation, pushing the Ukrainians further in the southern direction towards the settlements by the name of Velykyi Burluk, and further in the southern direction towards the settlement of Shcherbynivka. We see that the Kharkiv offensive operation is gaining a momentum, and we see that right now the Ukrainians are not able to do anything with this situation. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Orikhiv-Zaporizhzhia direction, because during the previous 12 hours lots of very important updates were also recorded through this territory. And the most important update is the situation between the cities of Orikhiv and Mala Tokmachka, and these are the changes on the ground. Yesterday in the evening, a very reliable pro-Russian source stated that the Russians, as a result of clashes, managed to establish complete control over these pocket between the settlement of Orikhiv and Mala Tokmachka. As of now, we haven't received proofs about the situation. We are waiting for additional videos or geolocations or reports of the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation. As of now, this information was provided and confirmed just by the very reliable sources, but this is a very important situation because now we see that the Russians captured not just the southeastern parts of the city of Orikhiv and the settlement of Mala Tokmachka. The Russians managed to create a very stable logistic hub in the southeastern parts of the Orikhiv agglomeration. Right now, the Russians have no problems to supply and to support their contingent in the area of the city of Orikhiv with the purpose to accelerate the assault operation itself. So this is a very important situation. We expect that in coming days, in coming weeks, the map would be adjusted significantly, and most likely within the next months, the Russians would announce complete control over the settlement of Orikhiv right before the beginning of the Russian parliament elections. Furthermore, during the previous 12 hours, during the previous night, basically between the 12th and 11th of August of 2026, the Russians carried out a massive attack through the entire territory of Ukraine. The Russians were attacking the city of Zaporizhzhia. Lots of explosions were recorded through this area. The Russians were using ballistic missiles. The Russians were using drones to attack the city of Zaporizhzhia. And this video, for example, was published this morning, and here we can see the consequences of attack. The Russians destroyed another warehouse, another big mall on the territory of the city. In this video we can see fire crews trying to extinguish the fire, but we see that most likely the building, this facility, was completely wiped out by Russians. And the Russians weren't the only who were attacking during the nights. The Ukrainians also attacked deep inside of the territory of Russia, and yesterday in the evening pro-Ukrainian sources published this picture where we can see the approximate roads of drones that were launched by the armed forces of Ukraine. The Ukrainians were using just regular drones, jet-powered drones, and reconnaissance drones. And as you can see, according to this picture, the Ukrainians were mainly attacking in the southern direction and deep inside of the territory of Russia. The Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation this morning reported that during the previous 24 hours they destroyed up to 1,000 of drones of the armed forces of Ukraine. As for the attack deep inside of the territory of Russia, this attack was repelled by Russians. As for the attack in the southern direction, this attack was probably also repelled by Russians, and the sources reported that a very heavy air battle was recorded through this area. And this is the picture, this is the video that was published from the area of the city of Novorossiysk, and in this video we can see how the Russian air defense forces were trying to destroy and to intercept Ukrainian drones that were attacking the city. Lots of videos like this one were published during the night. We can see how the Russians air defense forces were repelling attack, and it seems that indeed the Russians managed to repel this attack and to destroy every single drone that was launched by the armed forces of Ukraine. Yes, of course, a lot of explosions, damages were recorded through the city, a lot of fire anomalies were recorded, but according to information we have, all these fire anomalies are just the consequences of explosions that took place right after drones of the armed forces of Ukraine were destroyed over the city of Novorossiysk. So according to information we have, the Ukrainians haven't managed to deal damage to objects of strategical infrastructure or of a military infrastructure and so on. Once again, lots of explosions were recorded, but this attack was repelled. This attack was repelled despite the number of drones that the Ukrainians used. And once again, I would like to point to attention that according to the Minister of Defense of Russia, the Ukrainians used more than or around 1,000 drones to attack the territory of Russia, both in the southern direction and in the direction of the central part of Russia. So, furthermore, the Russians were repelling these drones, this swarm of drones, not just over the city of Novorossiysk. For example, this video was published from the area around the Crimean Bridge. So, the Russians were destroying the Ukraine's drones all over the way from the territory of Ukraine towards the city of Novorossiysk. So, that was one of the biggest, one of the heaviest battles, air battles, since the beginning of the special military operation through the southern regions and Crimea. And once again, this attack was repelled. Lots of videos were published, lots of damages were recorded, but objects of critical infrastructure haven't been damaged by the armed forces of Ukraine. And right after this attack ended, the Russians began their own attacks, and the Russians were attacking the capital of Ukraine, the city of Kyiv. As for the overnight attack, the Ukrainian sources stated that the Russians used probably 138 drones to attack the territory of Ukraine. The Ukrainians repelled 112 drones of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, and these are the numbers regarding the overnight attack. And the sources reported that the Russians increased the number of jet-powered drones of the fourth generation of Geraint type. Now the Russians are trying to intensify production of these drones, and during the night, during this morning, after the Ukrainians finished with their overnight attack, the Russians launched their jet-powered Geraint 3 and 4 drones, and here we can see the approximate routes of attacks between 8 a.m. and basically at 12 p.m. of the 12th of August of 2026. The Russians were attacking the capital of Ukraine, the city of Kyiv, from the Bryansk region. The drones were flying along the border with the Republic of Belarus. The drones were flying through the central part of Ukraine. These drones were launched from the area of the city of Donetsk, and the sources reported that the Russians attacked a very big ammo depot on the territory of the city of Kyiv, and this picture was published this morning. And during the time when I was making this video, more videos and more updates were published on this matter. So it seems that a very big ammo depot or warehouse was destroyed by the Russians as a result of the jet-powered drones attack that took place this morning right after the overnight attack was finished. So the situation is becoming critical, as we can see. This morning also the president of Russia made a lot of very interesting statements on the matter of vessels, Russian vessels that are moving through the international waters. And today the president of Russia stated that from now on the Russians must strike back and to retaliate every time when the Western countries and European countries make some actions, aggressive actions against the Russian vessels and the Russian fleet. So which means that in coming days, in coming months, we will see a lots of important updates about sea wars, not just through the Black Sea, but obviously and through the international waters, especially through the Pacific Ocean. So let's wait and see what is going to be next, but we see that the conflict is not going to be reduced. We see that the conflict in Ukraine and the international worldwide conflict is intensifying. And that's it for the short video. The Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.